welcome to my channel. My name is Tristan, and today we are going to be talking about one of the biggest problems people have when trying to save money. And if you haven't read the title when you clicked on this video, I'm sure you could probably guess what I may be talking about, and that's going to be eating out. Now, eating out alone may not seem like that big of a deal. You know, it's only a few dollars here and there. However, the majority of people that eat out regularly probably do so 3 to 5 times a week. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about how much money you could actually save if you stopped eating out, or at least cut back a little and invested that money instead. But before we get into that, if you enjoy this video, go ahead and give it a like. It helps my channel out a ton. And if you enjoy these types of videos, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and I'll be releasing weekly videos. Now in this video, I'm going to break it down into 3 different sections. And these sections are going to be based off of how often you eat out, and if you eat out alone, or if you take a date with you, and things like that. The first section is going to be based upon someone who eats out about 3 times a week and spends roughly $10 per meal. The second section is going to be based upon if you eat out 5 times a week at roughly, again, $10 a meal. And the final section is going to be if you eat out 3 times a week, roughly $10 a meal. However, you take a date with you and you are paying for that date. Now, I understand that if you're eating out with someone else, you may not always be paying for them. And if that's your case, go ahead and refer to the first section. However, if you are the type of person who is in a relationship or not in a relationship and you are always paying for the other person, that section will be very applicable for you. So let's start off with the person who eats out 3 times a week at roughly $10 a week. Now on average, that's going to cost you $30 a week, $130 per month, or $1,560 per year. Now that may or may not seem like a lot of money for you. However, the alternative to you not eating out isn't you just letting that money sit there. You could actually invest it instead. Now let's say, for example, you just let that money sit there for 5 years. That would be about $7,800 within those 5 years that you would have just spent on fast food. Now if you invested that money instead of just letting it sit there, let's say you put it in the stock market and got an 8% return, that would be about $9,551 after those 5 years. Now let's take a person who eats out 5 times a week at $10 per meal, or maybe a little less per week, but spends a little bit more per meal, so about $50 a week. Now that $50 a week is going to be about $216 per month, or $2,600 per year. Now again, if we take all that money and we put it in the stock market at that 8% return, that's going to be about $15,920 in 5 years just on fast food. You could buy a car with that money. You could get a down payment on a house with that money, depending upon where you live. There's a lot of things you can do with almost $16,000. Now let's say you're in that third category and you go out to eat and you always take someone else with you and you end up paying for them. Again, let's take it at about $10 a meal per person, so $60 a week, or $260 a month, or $3,120 per year. And again, if we take that money and instead of letting it sit there, invest it in the stock market and get an 8% return, that's going to be about $19,104 after 5 years. Now, of course, you could put in whatever scenario you want in there, but as you can see, the more money you spend on eating out, the more money you could be saving for the future. And that amount of money may not seem like that big of a deal for you. And if it's not, if you're making significantly more than that and you're still able to save a ton, by all means, go ahead and eat out. However, for a lot of people, $20,000 is a significant amount of money. Especially if you're in your teens or your early 20s, you're probably spending a lot more money than most people on eating out because you either don't know how to cook or you don't want to cook, and you're probably making less than most people do in the future. And in today's times, there's also so many delivery services like Postmates, Grubhub, DoorDash that are going to charge you a delivery fee to deliver that fast food to your house. And I know not everyone uses that, however, it's super convenient and a ton of people actually do. Especially in these times with the pandemic going on, a lot of people don't want to go into those physical restaurants, and so they'll have their food delivered. And that just adds on top of the already expensive eating out habits that people have and could add up to a few thousand more dollars over that time period. But overall, let's say you spend an average of $50 a week on eating out, and that could either be alone, some cheap places, and then maybe some more expensive places sometimes, or eating out with someone else and paying for them. Adding that all up, it really ends up being about $3,000 per year, which is quite a bit of money considering the other things you're probably paying for. And I totally understand, most everyone eats out. I eat out, not a ton, but once or twice a month. And it really is something that's enjoyable for some people and it brings them happiness. And by all means, if that's the case, go ahead and do it. I'm not trying to get you to stop eating out completely. And a lot of people can even argue that the cost of groceries and cooking at home may be somewhat equivalent to eating out as well. Now, I would say that eating out is probably always going to be more expensive than if you're cooking your own food at home. Now, it's going to be a little bit different. If you're cooking steaks every night, then yeah, it's probably going to add up and be pretty expensive. However, there's a lot of staple foods that you can cook into so many different meals that are super affordable. And that's going to be whether you're going to a generic grocery store and just buying, normal groceries, or even if you're going to a health food store, it's still usually cheaper than if you are eating out. Now, you don't have to stop eating out completely. You can see if you compare the person who's spending about $30 a week to the person who's spending about $50 a week, it's about $1,000 a year difference in savings. So even just cutting back 1 or 2 meals a week is going to be huge and will make a big difference in the long run to how much money you're able to save. Now, personally, especially when I was in college, I used to eat out all the time. There were so many great places so close to my apartment. It was super easy. It was accessible. Our fridge wasn't super big, so we shared it with 4 different people, and you couldn't really just store a ton of stuff in there, so sometimes it was just easier to go and eat out. Now, with that, over the past few years, I've really cut back on how much I eat out and how much I spend every time we do go and eat out. And so I wanted to share a few tips with you on what I do to cut back on eating out and save a little bit more money. And the first thing is just simply going to be eat out less often. Now, what we did to do that is my wife and I, we actually came up with a budget of how much money that we can spend on eating out every month, and that budget is about $50. Now, that may not seem like a lot for 2 people. However, that still lets us eat out 2 or 3 times a month, and really we found that we don't miss it a ton. Now, yeah, there are some times where we really crave something and we want to go out and get it. However, at that point, we usually still have some money left in our budget where we can do that. Now, this next step really ties in and goes hand in hand with the first one, but that is when you do go and eat out, go ahead and eat out at cheaper places. With the huge variety of places there are to eat out, there are so many places that you can go to that really taste great. And eating out doesn't always have to be a fancy occasion. You don't always have to get dressed up and go to a sit-down restaurant, pay a tip, and all those sort of things. You can simply just go through a drive-thru and bring it home and eat it, or just eat it in your car. And if you even want to save more money, when you do go to those cheap places, you don't have to get the expensive meals or those things up on the board that say, oh, I want a number 7 that costs $8.50. Instead, you could always go to that corner, see the dollar menu, and just order things off the dollar menu. Typically, a few items on the dollar menu will fill you up just as much as one of those combo meals would. Now, one thing you can do to make it feel like you're not completely cutting back on fast food and trying to live as frugally as possible is you could still go to nice places on special occasions. Things like birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, those sort of things, it's totally fine to splurge every once in a while as long as you're budgeting that into your savings plan. And by eating out at those cheaper places and ordering off the dollar menu, it'll make it more affordable for you to actually do those things. And the last one I want to talk about is ordering less when you go to eat out. I remember when I was in college, I'd be like, oh, that looks good, that looks good, that looks good. And I'd order all these different things and that'd end up being like, oh, I have 1 chicken sandwich left over, some extra fries, or a Frosty that I'm not going to finish. And it's like, well, I might as well finish it because I bought it. But my body really didn't need that, and sometimes it even made me not feel good after I ate that much food. So really one thing to do is consider how much you're actually going to eat, how much you actually need, and then just cut back on the portions a little bit. Now, there is one other time when it's always okay to eat out, and that is when someone else is willing to pay for it. And I know that may not be the case for everyone, or it may not happen all the time. However, if you are younger, maybe in your teens or your early 20s, this opportunity may come up a little more often than for most other people. If you have a favorite sibling who's older and has a lot of money, or maybe even your parents who like to take you out every once in a while, then those opportunities are always great because they're free and those don't hurt your bank account. But just to sum things up in the end, you don't have to completely cut back on eating out. However, the more you do, the more money you'll be able to save. And as you can see, over 1 to 5 years, you can really save anywhere from $3,000 to $20,000 depending upon how much money you're spending, and that could be a lot more or a lot less depending upon how crazy you get. But there we go. I hope I helped paint a little bit of a picture about how much money that you can actually save, and I hope it helped at least someone out there when it comes to savings, and maybe you're saving for something big and this will help. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like and hit the subscribe button for more content, and I will see you next time.